The red warning lights flashed across the control room as Ambassador Kira Velthane stared at the massive display screen. Her blue skin had turned pale, and her forearms trembled as she watched the enemy fleet approach their peaceful world. The Vorthan Empire had finally come for them. How many ships? She asked her aide, trying to keep her voice steady. 312, Ambassador, all military vessels. They will reach our orbit in 47 hours. Kira closed her large eyes and took a deep breath. The Zilani had no military ships. They were traders and farmers, not warriors. Their entire planet had maybe 20 old cargo ships and a few mining vessels. Nothing that could fight the Vorthans. Send word to all our colonies. Tell them to prepare for the worst, she said quietly. Her aide nodded and hurried away. Kira remained standing before the display, watching the red dots that represented death moving closer to her world. The Vorthan Empire was known throughout the galaxy for one thing. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who got in their way. The Zilani had been lucky for 50 years. Their world was far from the main trade routes, and they had nothing. The Vorthans wanted. But that had changed 6 months ago when they discovered the rare crystals deep in their planet's core. Crystals that could power the fastest ships in the galaxy. Word had spread quickly through the trading networks. The Zilani had been happy at first. They thought the crystals would make them rich and help them build better lives for their families. They never imagined it would bring the Vorthans to their door. Kira walked to her private office and sat behind her desk. She pulled up the communication system and began scrolling through the list of contacts. The Zilani had friends throughout the galaxy, but most were traders like themselves. None had military ships that could stand against the Vorthans. Then she saw it. A name that had been added to their contact list just 2 months ago. Earth Diplomatic Corps. The humans were new to galactic politics. They had only made contact with other species 5 years ago, and most people still didn't know much about them. The Zilani had met them during a trading mission to the Proxima station. They seemed friendly enough, and they had good prices for their manufactured goods. Kira remembered Captain Jake Morrison, the human who had negotiated their first trade agreement. He was tall and had strange hair that was yellow like their sun. He spoke their language well and had been respectful of their customs. Most importantly, he had seemed honest. But could the humans help them? Kira had heard rumors about human military strength, but they seemed too wild to believe. Some traders claimed the humans had fought off pirate attacks with incredible skill. Others said they had ships that could appear and disappear like ghosts. But rumors were just rumors. Still, what choice did she have? The Galactic Council would take weeks to respond, if they responded at all. Most of the major powers wouldn't risk a war with the Vorthans over one small colony. The humans were her only hope. Kira activated the long-range communication array and composed her message carefully. She had to be honest about how desperate their situation was, but she also couldn't ask for too much. The humans barely knew them. This is Ambassador Kira Velthane of the Zilani colony on Kepler 442b. We are sending this message to request urgent assistance. The Vorthan Empire has sent a large military fleet to our world. They will arrive in less than 2 days. We are a peaceful people with no military ships. We cannot defend ourselves against this attack. She paused, thinking about what else to say. How do you ask strangers to risk their lives for you? We know we have no right to ask this of you. Our two peoples have only just begun to know each other, but we have nowhere else to turn. Any help you can provide would be greatly appreciated. Even if you can only send one ship, it would show the galaxy that someone stands with us. Kira sent the message and sat back in her chair. She felt a little better, but not much. Even if the humans wanted to help, what could they do? They were new to space travel. They probably only had a few ships, and those were likely cargo vessels like their own. The next few hours passed slowly. Kira tried to focus on evacuation plans, but her mind kept returning to the approaching fleet. The Vorthons didn't take prisoners. They would kill everyone on the planet and take the crystals. Then her communication system chimed. A message from Earth. Ambassador Velthane, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Liberty. We received your distress call. I want you to know that help is on the way. I cannot give you details over this channel, but I am personally coming to your system. Hold on. The situation is not as hopeless as it seems. Kira read the message 3 times. Captain Morrison was coming himself. That was something, at least. But 1 ship against 300? It would be suicide. She sent back a quick reply. Thank you, Captain Morrison. We are grateful for any help you can provide. Please be careful. The Vorthons show no mercy to those who oppose them. Hours passed. The Vorthon fleet continued its approach, and Kira's people prepared for the worst. Families gathered together. The few weapons they had were distributed to volunteers who had no idea how to use them. Children were moved to the deepest shelters. Then, another message arrived from Captain Morrison. Ambassador, I am now in your system. The support fleet should arrive soon. Do not lose hope, support fleet. Kira felt confused. What support fleet? She had only asked for help from Earth. Maybe the humans had contacted other species. But who would answer such a call? She looked at her sensors and saw a single ship approaching from the edge of their system. It was small, probably just a diplomatic vessel like Morrison had said. But where was this support fleet he mentioned? As the hours ticked by, Kira began to worry that Captain Morrison was being too optimistic. Maybe he was hoping other ships would come, but hope wouldn't stop the Vorthons. She prepared herself for the worst while clinging to the smallest thread of hope that somehow, someway the humans had a plan. The red dots on her screen grew larger. 24 hours until the Vorthons arrived. And still, she saw only 1 human ship approaching their world. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching dozens of screens that showed ships moving across the solar system. The message from Captain Morrison had arrived 6 hours ago, and Earth's military machine was already in motion. Status report, she called out to her staff. 3rd Fleet is moving out from Mars orbit. 96 ships ready for jump, reported Commander Tony Clark from his station. 7th Fleet departing from Luna Base. 240 ships confirmed ready. 9th Fleet launching from Earth orbit now. Admiral Kane reports all ships operational. Lisa nodded as she watched the displays. She had been waiting for something like this for 20 years. Earth had been building its military in secret, preparing for the day when humanity would need to show its strength among the stars. That day had come sooner than expected. What about the support ships? She asked. Supply vessels are loaded and ready. Medical ships standing by. Engineering Corps has their repair ships in formation, answered Lieutenant Sarah Brooks. General Rodriguez confirms all Marine units are aboard and ready for deployment. The communication screen lit up with an incoming call from Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane aboard the USS Washington. His weathered face appeared on the main display. Lisa, my ships are ready to jump. The 9th Fleet will lead the advance. What are our rules of engagement? Protect the Zelani colony at all costs. If the Vorthons want a fight, we give them one they will never forget, Lisa replied. This is our chance to show the galaxy what humanity can do. Marcus smiled grimly. Understood. My captains are eager to test our new weapons systems. The Vorthons picked the wrong species to mess with. Lisa ended the call and turned to her intelligence officer. What do we know about Vorthon military tactics? Major Dan Foster pulled up a holographic display showing Vorthon ship designs. They rely on heavy frontal assault. Lots of big guns, thick armor, but they are not very flexible. Their commanders follow rigid battle plans. They have never faced an enemy that could match their numbers. Well, They are about to face an enemy that can do more than match their numbers, Lisa said. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes. Operation Shield Wall is now active. You know your mission. A peaceful species has asked for our help, and we will not let them down. She paused, looking at the faces of her staff. These were good people, men and women, who had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth and its allies. Today they would make history. The Vorthans think they can bully anyone they want. They think humanity is weak because we are new to the galaxy. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Show them what humans do when innocent people are threatened. Across the solar system, ships began jumping to hyperspace. The Third Fleet under Admiral Pete Collins went first, their sleek destroyers and cruisers disappearing in flashes of blue light. The Seventh Fleet followed, led by Captain Ryan Bell in his massive battleship USS Denver, on Mars. General Amy Rodriguez watched her troops board the transport ships. These Marines had trained for years, learning to fight in zero gravity on alien worlds in every condition imaginable. They were ready for war. "General, the fleet is ready for your Marines," came a voice over her communicator. "Load them up," Amy replied. "If the Vorthans want to fight on the ground, they will meet the finest soldiers in the galaxy." Back on Earth, Captain Morrison received a coded message from Admiral Hayes. He was ordered to keep the Zilani calm, but not to reveal the size of the human response. The surprise would be total. Morrison looked at his small crew aboard the USS Liberty. They were all volunteers, men and women, who had jumped at the chance to represent humanity among the stars. Today, they would be the advance guard for the largest military operation in human history. "Captain, we are receiving another transmission from the Zilani ambassador," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Mike Chun. "Put her through." Morrison said. Ambassador Kira Vel-Thane appeared on his screen, her alien features showing clear signs of stress. "Captain Morrison, our sensors show the Vorthan fleet will arrive in 18 hours. Is your support fleet close?" Morrison chose his words carefully. "Ambassador, I can promise you that help is coming. More help than you can imagine. Just hold on a little longer. How many ships are you sending?" she asked. Morrison smiled slightly. "Enough." After ending the call, Morrison turned to his crew. "People, we are about to be part of something incredible. For the first time in human history, we are going to show the galaxy who we really are. The Vorthans think they are facing a few cargo ships and maybe a patrol vessel. They have no idea what is coming." Meanwhile, the Vorthan fleet continued toward the Zilani world. Commander Vex-9 had received reports of a single human ship in the system, but he was not concerned. The humans were new to space travel. They probably had a few old ships and no real weapons. "Commander, should we prepare for battle against this human vessel?" asked one of his officers. Vex-9 laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge of his flagship. "One ship against 300. This will be over before it begins. We will destroy their pathetic vessel and then take the crystal mines. The humans will learn not to interfere with the Vorthan Empire." But across the galaxy, human ships were jumping through hyperspace toward the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Hayes had mobilized over 1,200 vessels, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. They came from every corner of human space. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, fighters, support ships, and troop transports. The Zilani had asked for help. The Vorthans expected to face a few frightened traders and maybe one human ship. Instead, they were about to encounter the full might of the human military, a force that had been building in secret for decades. The trap was set, the fleet was coming, and the galaxy was about to see what happened when humanity said no to bullies. The alarm started screaming at exactly 0800 hours Zilani time. Ambassador Kira Vel-Thane rushed to the main control room, her forearms moving quickly as she tried to understand what was happening. The sensor operators were shouting numbers that made no sense. "What is going on?" she demanded. "Ambassador, we are detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of our system," said her chief sensor officer, his voice shaking. "The readings are off our charts. Is it the Vorthons? Are they early?" The officer checked his instruments again. "No, ma'am. These signatures are coming from the opposite direction. And the energy patterns are different. These are not Vorthon ships." Kira felt her hearts racing. How many ships? The officer's hands trembled as he worked his controls. "I cannot get an exact count. The computer keeps saying error. There are too many contacts to process." At that moment, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Hundreds of blue-white portals appeared, each one larger than anything the Zilani had ever seen. From each portal, human warships emerged in perfect formation. First came the destroyers, sleek and fast, spreading out to create a protective screen. Then the cruisers appeared, their weapons already powering up. Behind them came the massive battleships, each one larger than the biggest Vorthon vessel. And still they kept coming. "By the sacred moons," whispered Kira as she watched the display screen. "How many are there?" The sensor officer had stopped trying to count. He simply stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Over 1,000 ships. Ambassador, maybe more. I have never seen anything like this." On the bridge of the USS Liberty, Captain Morrison smiled as he watched his sensor display fill with friendly contacts. "Communications, send a message to Ambassador Velthane. Tell her the cavalry has arrived." Meanwhile, the human fleet continued to deploy. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Washington, watching as her ships took their positions. The formation was perfect, each vessel exactly where it needed to be. "All fleets report ready for battle," announced Commander Sophie Martinez from her station. "Third Fleet has taken position on the left flank. 7th Fleet is moving to the right. 9th Fleet is holding the center." "Excellent," Hayes replied. "Signal all ships. Maintain formation and await orders." The sight of the human fleet was visible to every sensor in the system. On the approaching Vorthon ships, alarms began to sound as their sensors detected the massive force waiting for them. Commander Vex-9 stared at his tactical display in complete shock. The numbers could not be right. His sensors showed over 1,200 enemy vessels arranged in battle formation. It was impossible. "Check the sensors again," he ordered his crew. "There must be an error." "Sir, we have run diagnostics 3 times. The readings are correct," replied his sensor operator. "We are facing a fleet nearly 4 times our size." Vex-9 felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The Vorthon Empire had built its reputation on having the largest fleets in the galaxy. No one had ever faced them with superior numbers. But the humans had somehow assembled a force that made his 300 ships look small. Where did they get so many ships? He asked aloud. His intelligence officer checked his files. "Sir, our reports on human military strength were clearly wrong. We believed they had maybe 50 ships total. Instead, they appear to have one of the largest fleets in known space." On the Zilani world below, crowds gathered around public viewing screens to watch the incredible sight above their planet. The human fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation, each ship's lights twinkling in the darkness. "They came for us," said an old Zilani farmer to his grandson. "The humans actually came to help us." Children pointed up at the sky, asking their parents to explain what they were seeing. Adults stood in stunned silence, unable to believe that anyone would send such a massive force to protect their small colony. Back in the control room, Ambassador Kira received a communication from the human fleet. Admiral Hayes appeared on her screen, her face calm and confident. "Ambassador Velthane, this is Admiral Lisa Hayes of the Human Defense Force. We received your call for help. As you can see, we take the protection of our friends very seriously." "Kira, could barely speak. "Admiral Hayes, this is incredible. We asked for help, but we never imagined anything like this. You have sent your entire fleet for us?" "Not our entire fleet," Hayes replied with a slight smile. "Just the ships we had available. On short notice. Now I believe you have some unwanted visitors approaching your system. Would you like us to have a conversation with them?" The Vorthan fleet was still 6 hours away, but they had clearly detected the human presence. Commander Thex-9 sent a message demanding to know what the humans were doing in Zilani space. Admiral Hayes responded personally. "Commander Thex-9, this is Admiral Lisa Hayes. I am here to inform you that the Zilani colony is under the protection of the Human Defense Force. You are ordered to turn your fleet around and leave this system immediately." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in both fleets could hear it. The human ships moved into tighter formation, their weapon systems clearly visible and ready for action. Thex-9 stared at the message for a long time. His empire had never backed down from a fight, but he had never faced odds like this. His 300 ships against over 1,200 enemy vessels was not a battle, it was suicide. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his second-in-command. Thex-9 looked at the tactical display one more time. The human ships were arranged in a formation that showed centuries of military thinking. These were not cargo pilots playing soldier. These were professional warriors with weapons he had never seen before. For the first time in Vorthan history, a fleet commander considered retreat. Commander Thex-9 stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the massive human fleet displayed on his tactical screen. His hands gripped the command rail so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. For 20 years, he had conquered worlds. For the Vorthan Empire, he had never retreated from any battle. "Sir, the human admiral is requesting a response," said his communications officer. "How long do we have before we reach weapons range?" Thex-9 asked. 4 hours, sir. But they could launch fighters now if they wanted to. Thex-9 looked around. His bridge. His crew was trying to hide their fear, but he could see it in their eyes. They had come expecting to fight farmers and traders. Instead, they faced the largest military force any of them had ever seen. "Send a message to the humans," he said finally. "Tell them that the Vorthan Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. We will take what we came for." His officers looked surprised. They had expected him to at least try to find a way out of this situation. But Vorthan pride ran deep, and backing down from humans would bring shame to their entire race. On the USS Washington, Admiral Hayes received the Vorthan response with no surprise. She had studied their culture and knew they would never surrender. Without a fight, that was fine with her. Humanity was ready to teach them a lesson. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes. The Vorthans have chosen to fight. Battle stations. Prepare to show them what happens when they threaten innocent people." Across the human fleet, thousands of sailors and marines rushed to their positions. Weapon systems came online. Fighter squadrons prepared for launch. The massive formation began to move forward, heading directly toward the approaching Vorthan. Fleet. Captain Ryan Bell commanded the USS Denver, one of the largest battleships in the human fleet. He stood on his bridge watching the enemy ships grow larger on his screens. "All weapons ready, sir," reported his tactical officer. "Targeting systems locked on the lead Vorthan vessels." "Hold fire until the Admiral gives the order," Bell replied. "Let them get close enough to see what they are really fighting." The two fleets approached each other across the empty space between planets. The Vorthans maintained their traditional battle formation, with their heaviest ships in the center, and smaller vessels protecting the flanks. They had used this formation to conquer dozens of worlds. The humans used something completely different. Their ships moved in complex patterns that seemed to dance around each other. Smaller destroyers wove between the larger vessels while cruisers formed protective groups around the massive battleships. It was like watching a perfectly choreographed performance. Ambassador Kira watched the approaching battle from her command center on the planet below. She had never seen anything like it. The human ships moved with a precision that took her breath away. "They fight like they have been doing this for centuries," she said to her aide. "How is that possible? They only reached space 5 years ago." Kira shook her head. "I think we have been very wrong about the humans. They are not the peaceful traders we thought they were." As the fleets drew closer, the first shots were fired. The Vorthons opened with their heavy plasma cannons, sending bright green bolts of energy toward the human formation. The humans responded with weapons the Vorthons had never seen before. Brilliant blue beams lanced out from the human ships, striking Vorthon vessels with incredible accuracy. The first Vorthon cruiser exploded in a ball of flame, followed quickly by 2 more. The battle had begun, and it was already going badly for the Empire. "Impossible," shouted Vex-9 as he watched 3 of his ships die in the first exchange. "How are their weapons so powerful?" His tactical officer checked his instruments. "Sir, their energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. These weapons are completely new." The human fleet continued to advance, their ships moving in perfect coordination. Fighter squadrons launched from the larger vessels, small craft that moved faster than anything the Vorthons had ever seen. These fighters swarmed around the enemy ships like angry insects, their weapons tearing holes in thick armor. Captain Sophie Martinez commanded a cruiser squadron on the left flank of the human formation. Her ships moved to surround a group of Vorthon destroyers, cutting off their escape route. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead vessel," she ordered. "Show them how we deal with bullies." Her cruisers fired together, their combined weapons turning the Vorthon destroyer into scrap metal in seconds. The remaining enemy ships tried to flee, but the human vessels were faster and more maneuverable. The battle was turning into a complete disaster for the Vorthons. Their rigid formation was being torn apart by human tactics they could not understand. Ships that had never been defeated were exploding one after another. "Sir, we have lost 40 ships in the first 10 minutes, reported Vex-9's tactical officer. "Our formation is breaking apart." Vex-9 watched in horror as his proud fleet was systematically destroyed. The humans were not just winning, they were making it look easy. Their ships moved like they could read his mind, always appearing where he least expected them. "All ships, retreat to jump position," he ordered. "We cannot win this battle." But the humans were not going to let them escape so easily. Admiral Hayes had positioned part of her fleet to block the Vorthon escape route. The enemy ships found themselves trapped, surrounded by human vessels on all sides. "Surrender now, and your surviving crews will be treated well," came Admiral Hayes' voice over the communication system. "Continue fighting, and none of you will leave this system alive." Vex-9 looked at his tactical display. More than half his fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships were damaged and running low on weapons. The humans had barely taken any losses at all. For the first time in Vorthon history, a fleet commander prepared to surrender. The Empire's reputation for invincibility was about to end in the most humiliating way possible. They had not just lost to humans, they had been completely outclassed by them. The battle that was supposed to be an easy victory had become a total defeat in less than 30 minutes. The silence that followed the battle was almost as shocking as the fighting itself. Where once 300 Vorthon ships had approached the Zilani world, now only 47 damaged vessels remained. They floated dead in space, their weapons powered down and their crews waiting for orders that would never come. Commander Vex-9 sat in his command chair, staring at the communication panel. The words he was about to speak had never been spoken by a Vorthon commander in the history of their empire. His voice was barely a whisper when he finally activated the transmission. "Human fleet, this is Commander Vex-9 of the Vorthon Empire. We surrender." On the bridge of the USS Washington, Admiral Hayes nodded to her communications officer. "Signal all ships to cease fire." Prepare boarding parties for the Vorthen vessels. I want their crew treated well, but I also want to know everything about their military capabilities. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Trading ships in nearby systems picked up the transmissions and carried word to every major spaceport. Within hours, governments on dozens of worlds were emergency meetings to discuss what the human victory meant. On the Zelani homeworld, crowds filled the streets in celebration. Ambassador Kira stood on the balcony of her government building, looking up at the human fleet that still protected their sky. Tears ran down her blue cheeks as she spoke to her people. Today we learned what it means to have true friends, she said into the microphone. The humans came to our aid when no one else would. They asked for nothing in return except our friendship. We will never forget this day. The crowd cheered, but Kira's mind was already thinking about the future. The galaxy had changed today. Everyone now knew that humanity was not the weak newcomer they had appeared to be. They were a major power, perhaps the strongest military force anyone had ever seen. 3 days later, Captain Jake Morrison found himself in a very different position than when he had first arrived at the Zelani world. His small diplomatic vessel was now surrounded by the largest fleet in human history, and he was no longer just a trade negotiator. Admiral Hayes had promoted him to Chief Diplomatic Officer and given him a new mission. Jake, every government in this sector wants to talk to us, Hayes told him during their morning meeting. The Galactic Council has sent 3 separate messages asking for a formal meeting. The Altarian Federation wants to discuss a defense treaty. Even the Centauri Trade Alliance is asking about military partnerships. Morrison looked at the list of diplomatic requests on his tablet. It was longer than anything he had ever seen. Admiral, 6 months ago most of these governments wouldn't return our calls. Now they all want to be our best friends. That's what happens when you show strength, Hayes replied. The galaxy respects power. We just proved we have more of it than anyone imagined. The formal ceremony took place 1 week after the battle. Admiral Hayes and Ambassador Kira signed the Human Zelani Alliance Treaty in front of representatives from 20 different species. The signing was broadcast live across the galaxy, and everyone watching understood its importance. This was not just a treaty between 2 small peoples. This was humanity announcing that it would protect its friends no matter what the cost. Any species that threatened human allies would face the same fate as the Vorthens. The Vorthen Empire itself was in chaos. News of their fleet's defeat had reached their homeworld, and the government was struggling to understand how their most experienced commander had been so completely defeated. Emergency meetings were held to discuss whether other human fleets might be approaching Vorthen space. How many ships do the humans have? Asked the Vorthen High Command. We do not know, replied their intelligence chief. Our estimates were clearly wrong. If they can deploy over 1,000 ships to protect one small colony, they might have 10 times that number in reserve. The truth was even more shocking than they imagined. Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes was meeting with her staff to discuss the next phase of human expansion into galactic politics. The 3rd, 7th, and 9th fleets performed perfectly, she told her officers. But we still have the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, and 10th fleets available for deployment. Not to mention the home defense fleet and the new ships coming out of our shipyards every month. General Amy Rodriguez smiled from across the table. So we sent less than a quarter of our total fleet to Kepler 442. That's correct, Hayes confirmed. We wanted to send a message, but we also wanted to keep most of our strength in reserve. The galaxy is about to get very interesting, and we need to be ready for anything. Captain Morrison was promoted again and given command of the New Earth Diplomatic Corps. His first assignment was to establish formal relations with the Galactic Council, something that had been impossible before the battle at Kepler 442. Council meeting took place on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Morrison walked into the great assembly hall where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss galactic affairs. For years, humanity had been excluded from these meetings. Now every eye in the room was focused on him. "The Galactic Council recognizes Captain Morrison of Earth," announced the Council President. "We welcome humanity as a full member of this assembly." Morrison stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of beings from across the galaxy. Some looked friendly, others appeared worried, and a few seemed frightened. All of them were showing humanity the respect it had earned. "Thank you for this honor," Morrison said. "Humanity looks forward to working with all peaceful species to build a better galaxy. But let me be clear about one thing. We will always stand with our friends. Anyone who threatens innocent people will face the consequences." The applause was loud and long. In the back of the hall, the Vorthan representative sat quietly, knowing that his empire's days of easy conquest were over. The galaxy had expected humanity to send help to the Zelani. Instead, they had sent a message that would reshape interstellar politics forever. Humanity was no longer the newcomer asking for a seat at the table. They were now one of the most powerful voices in galactic affairs, and everyone knew it.